So we're going to begin. Tonight we'll do Parashat Pekudei. As you know, some years Vayakhel and Pekudei are together. This year they're separate. It's a leap year. Anyone who had the time to read through Parashat Vayakhel and Pekudei will notice that there's a great emphasis on the work that was done towards building the Mishkan. Many contributions, men and women are involved. There's a lot of wisdom, a lot of effort, a lot of thought that went into building the Mishkan. However, where did this chokhmah, where did this wisdom come from? People are not just born with a talent. Our tradition says very clearly that a talent or any other gift, and even wealth, is from Shamayim. And the Torah puts an emphasis on that, it is Hashem, it is God that gave certain individuals the talent and the skills that were necessary to put the Mishkan together. But the chokhmah that we become aware of in this parasha, Parashat Vayakhel and Parashat Pekudei, is more limited to the chokhmah, to the skill that goes into building a Mishkan. It required tremendous amount of skill, a lot of artisanship, a lot of beautiful design. It is obvious that there's a lot of chokhmah involved. But chokhmah is not just limited to making a Mishkan. Chokhmah is something that encompasses many, many areas. Rabbis tell us, who is a real chacham? You want to get to know someone who's a real chacham. It's not just someone who's skilled in a particular talent, but halomed mikol adam. He's prepared to learn from everyone. He loves to learn. Anyone that loves to learn, who wants to continue his education, that is indicative that he appreciates the chokhmah. So he should be called a chacham, not just one who's already knowledgeable in a particular area. In Arabic, for example, a student is called talib. Like Taliban, you may have heard, students. The original ones were students in the madrasa. They could be students today too, just that they have a hobby to use their guns in their spare time. But in reality, they're students. The root of that word is from talab, to ask, to request, to want. Similar idea to what I was just saying. The desire to know, the desire to enrich oneself with knowledge. That is what makes one a student. But perhaps the one that is more familiar to us of who is a chacham, who is considered a real chacham, is Eizu chacham haro'eh et hanolad. A true chacham, an individual who is intelligent, is one that can see the consequences of his actions. Nolad means the results, the consequences. In order to do that, obviously, he would have to evaluate the pros and cons of every situation before he takes action. So a real chacham, before he acts, before he does anything, of course, of great importance, should consider all the facts if possible, should evaluate the situation, and attempt his best to see what the outcome will be. And then he will decide whether it is worth it or not. So that's a very important point. Haro'eh tanolad, one who can see the future as much as possible. We can't know the future unless you're a prophet, but a chacham at least considers it, either from the experience of other people, or if he investigates and is able to determine what the potential consequences will be. Now, even though this is an important detail to know the consequences of one's actions or what are the possibilities, that is not so easy to know if an individual has no clue what the tachlit is, what is the purpose. Why is he doing something to begin with? A lot of people have no clue what the purpose of life is. So if they have no clarity on what is the tachlit of life, it will make it more difficult for them to weigh the pros and cons of every situation, because they don't have a complete picture. And that is true for anything. You need to know the tachlit. What exactly are you after? What do you want to accomplish? What is this for? What's the ultimate goal? Then it helps to evaluate the pros and cons. So if one has no idea what the tachlit of life is, what is the ultimate purpose, then all the efforts that he puts in will not necessarily give him the best results, because he may not be aware of some important ideas that would help him perhaps change direction, or approach in dealing with a particular problem or issue. But it's not so much problems and issues. We want to know what the tachlit is in order to be able to decide what is worth our time, what we should prioritize, where we should invest our efforts. Not so much the details perhaps, because for that we may have to consult others, professionals, but we need to evaluate a situation properly in order to know if this is worth our time or not. Is this important enough for me to devote my time? Up until now, from Matan Torah in Parashat Yitro up until this point, the Jewish people have become somewhat familiar with what that purpose is. They have gotten to know Hashem somewhat, firsthand. They have gotten to know that the Bet Hashem, the house of Hashem, the Mishkan, is of great importance. They realize by now, even though they don't have the knowledge of all the 613 commandments, they realize the importance of being connected to Hashem, being connected to the service of Hashem, that is an important part of a Jew's life, of his daily routine. That they already know by now. As a result of this, the Jew also knows that as much as he loves nature and he'd love to live in a place where there's no traffic jams, where it's quiet, where you can hear the birds chirping, it would be beautiful. But you need a Bet Hashem. A Jew who wants to observe the mitzvot properly needs to live in a community where there are other Jews like him, where there is a Bet Knesset, a synagogue, a house of Hashem, where there is a mikveh, a ritual bath for the women that need it. There's a school for the children. So that is the community life of a Jew. As a result of knowing that this is important, that this is central to Judaism, we know where we need to live. We still have choices. There are many, many communities, Baruch Hashem, in the world, right? But it limits us. We cannot just live anywhere we want. If you really like those beautiful places in the world where there is no community, go there for a visit, go for a vacation. That's fine. But to live a Jewish life, apparently, from what we know so far, it requires certain things. Bet Hashem, the house of Hashem, is central. It is a house of learning, it is a house of prayer, it is community. We do things together as the Jews. As a Jewish community, we need to do many things together. Therefore, upon completing the Mishkan, the Midrash says that Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Jewish people a blessing. It's very nice what you accomplished. You put this thing together, you all contributed. But what happens next? So he blesses them that the Yiratzon Shetishem Shekhinah Betoch Maaseh Yedechem, that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, should always reside with you. In other words, make sure you don't stay too far away from this. That everything that you do should be for the sake of heaven. Just like you just did now, you work towards accomplishing this goal, and you did it within your heart. You were focused on it. You cared about this. May you always have these kind of feelings. Imagine a husband and wife who care about each other just for a year. And after that, not so much. That's not a real marriage. That's not a real relationship. You want the relationship to continue to be strong. If that's the case, then you want everything being done for the real purpose. In other words, they're there for each other. That's the real purpose of marriage, to be there for each other, to help each other, to build something together. But if each one has different goals, if they don't have the same common goal, then it won't work. So here we have the entire Jewish nation having a common goal. May that common goal be with you for the rest of your life. May it stay strong. In this way you will be blessed, that the Shekhinah will continue to be with you. And when the Shekhinah is with you, of course, that means everything that you will do hopefully will come out right. What happens when the Shekhinah is with us, when we are blessed, when we recognize the ultimate tachlit of what we want to accomplish, is that we are able to figure out how to maximize our time, how to make better use of what we have. So for example, the Jewish people at that time had gold, had silver, had copper. The Torah lists all the materials that they had. How to make best use of it, how to work with it is one thing, but how to make best use of it was also part of the Lachashov Machshavot. If you read the Torah, it says that these individuals who had the knowledge were endowed also with the ability, lachashov machshavot, they were able to figure out how to make best use of what they have. For example, they realized somehow that copper was the best material for the pots and pans. It can handle the fire better. I mean, gold and silver would melt. So they knew where to put the gold, where to put the silver, how to use or how to fashion the copper into the various tools that they need. So all of that is part of the chokhmah. Once you recognize this is the tachlit, this is what I want to accomplish, and of course you have the blessing of Hashem, you have the chokhmah of Hashem with you, you are able to direct your efforts in such a way that time is not wasted, money is not just wasted. There's beracha. Beracha means that Hashem is with you. He approves of what you're doing. You're bringing Him nachat ruach. You're bringing Him pleasure. He's pleased with our deeds. So therefore, He works with us. He's our partner. You do my will, I will do your will. So that is obviously as a result of having some clarity of what the tachlit is. If you don't know what you're about to do, what is the project all about, then how are you going to know to use the materials properly? They have a little bit of clarity, and that is what that chokhmah is all about. Not just on how to make things, but how to make best use of what they have. What else came out of all this work? What comes out of building a Mishkan, which is a holy place, is the realization that if a Jew is investing his time, a good part of his time in that which is holy, it builds him. As the famous Zohar says, when a poor man knocks on your door, you should realize that he's doing you a favor much more than you're doing him a favor. But the fact that he's asking you for charity, that's doing you a favor. It's enabling you to give, to observe a very important mitzvah. And that is a great thing. In other words, we may not have done that on our own. The fact that he knocked on the door, he gave us that opportunity to do something very special. But it wasn't so much that we helped him out. That's true. It helped us. The act of giving, as we explained several times, opens up our heart. It's not just a mitzvah, it does something to us. So in the same way that observing the mitzvot on a spiritual level builds us, involvement in that which is holy sanctifies us. We don't see it, it's something spiritual, but that's the fact. We know, for example, that if you have too many calories, you gain weight, right? Those things we see, it's physical. So hopefully we'll be more careful. We'll realize, oh, this is not too good for me. This is not as healthy for me. We see the effects almost immediately, or within a few days. You weigh yourself and you realize, I just gained 10 pounds. Now what do I do? How do I lose it? So these are things that we see immediately. The spiritual effects is not always noticeable right away, but we're told you will notice it eventually. Hopefully at the end of the year, you will realize you're a different man. Others will notice it too. So in the same way that physically there is an effect, certain actions produce certain results, spiritually as well. When we involve ourselves in something which is holy, we build the house of Hashem, we contribute toward that, we fulfill the mitzvot, it does something to us, it builds us. So this is also something that is noticeable as a result of the Jewish people being involved in this holy project. It elevated them to a very, very high level. Just look back at the time when they were in Egypt, slaves, with a slave mentality, with a different perspective about life. 50 days went by, right? From the time they left Egypt until they got the Torah. We're told that every day they went up one level. They had to escape the impure level, the level of impurity that existed in Egypt, which is not easy. But as a result of them going towards the goal, which they knew what it's all about. This is not a blind journey. They realized this is where they're headed. That in itself motivated them. They saw the miracles of Hashem, and those miracles, of course, helped them break away from the Egyptian culture. So they had this tremendous momentum, good momentum, of wanting to do the right thing. Unfortunately, there were ups and downs throughout the 40 years in the desert. That happens to all of us. We're only humans. But as they say in Hebrew, "Lefamim yesh yerida letzorech aliyah." As I explained last time, sometimes a person falls, but the fall is in order to pick him up, and to pick him up in a very big way, important way. So It may appear like it's something very, very sad and disappointing if somebody falls spiritually. But there's a good chance that this will give him the opportunity to connect to Hashem in a way he never did before. He could not have done that. Had he not been in prison, had he not been sick, he would not have prayed so strong. Imagine the situation, the circumstances brought him to his knees, as they say in English, and as a result of that, he connected in a way that he never would have connected. You know, like they say about adrenaline, sometimes you have this adrenaline that gives you a tremendous boost or more energy than you would have naturally. So, being connected with that which is spiritual and that which is holy does have an effect. People who associate with good people, hopefully something will stick to them. You associate with the bad people, with the wrong people, something will stick. Something. You're not necessarily going to be like them, God forbid, but something will stick just by virtue of association. So here it's not just association, it's actually being involved and really working hard to contribute towards something that we have some clarity as to what the tachlit is, what is the purpose of this. If somebody does not know what he's doing, why he's doing it, then he may not gain as much. Still, we are told that observance of the mitzvot does do something for us, even though we don't understand the logic of many of the mitzvot. Then we don't. We just do it because we're told. Doing it, being connected to that which is holy, and being, of course, regular about it, will definitely help build us in a spiritual way. Rabbis tell us that kol mekadesh tatzmo milemata mekachim oto milemala, which is also pretty much what we were saying. Whoever sanctifies himself down here below, they will sanctify him from above. In other words, if we make efforts down here in this direction to become better people, to become holier, then mishamayim, they will help us achieve that as well. All right. All of this is just a brief introduction about Parashat Pekudei. What I like to talk a little bit more about is about the word Pekudei. This is something that most people perhaps have not realized, have not paid attention to, because when you read about the parasha, you interpret the word Pekudei to mean the total. This is the total, this is the sum of the gold, of the silver, of the copper that was contributed towards the Mishkan. Okay, and you get a total number. That's what Pekudei means in this context. But Pekudei means more than just a number. The word pakod, or pakad, or lifkod has other meanings as well, even though they may all share the same root. What else could it be? Well, besides being a number, pakod itself is not a mispar, because that's what mispar is. Mispar is a number. Misfor. Lifkod or pakod also tells us that this is something that I consider very important. It is also something that I entrust. How do I know that it means to entrust? Because that's where the word pikadon comes from. When you entrust something, watch this for me, I'll be away for a few days. You give him a pikadon. Pikadon can also mean, of course, a collateral, because he's lent you money and he's taken the pikadon. But either way, it's entrusted to him for watching for a certain amount of time. That's also from the same root, pikadon. Or in the army, you have lefaked, a captain, a general gives pekudot, he gives commands. So you have that verb of pakod or pakad in that context as well in the military. All of this is understood. Why is there for the word Pekudei being used here instead of some other word to tell us about the sum, about the total? It could be, one possibility is, to remind us, you know, every contribution is important. Every one of you is important. That could be a simple explanation of why the word Pekudei was used here instead of some other word to tell us the sum. Because I just said that it could mean all kinds of things. So why use for number or for total the word Pekudei if it has something more to do with important, with telling people that this is something significant, that this is something that we considered or that we hold in high regard. Obviously, that's what this is. So because of the nature of the work, it's a mishkan, and to remind us that even small contributions are important, don't minimize those that only give a little bit. That's all they can give. Everyone's contribution is part of the Pekudei, part of the important total being added up. Of course, when we talk about material, we also mean that the individuals who gave that material, the people themselves, are important. No one should consider himself less because he gave less. Everyone is needed and everyone is important. Personally, however, I see the word Pekudei in a very different light, because I think it is a bigger picture of what's involved. The way I interpret it, at least an additional interpretation, is that the Torah is reminding us, by using the word Pekudei, every individual has a tafkid, which is also from the same root of pakod, tafkid, a mission. You see, you have people who actually were the builders, the architects, the engineers, the carpenters, who were involved in all kinds of work in the Mishkan. Not everyone did everything. Everyone had a tafkid. And I think that is a very powerful message in Parashat Pekudei. In using that word Pekudei as opposed to some other word to give us the total, we're being reminded every human being, not just a Jew, every human being has some special, unique mission to him. It's a tafkid, it's his tafkid. And because of that tafkid, Hashem says, I need you here in my world. You are important to me. You are precious to me. You don't think so, but I'm letting you know you are, because you have a tafkid. And this is the same way with the ecosystem. You have all kinds of reptiles and all kinds of birds and all kinds of animals and all kinds of things that we can't even see. The environment needs all of this. Hashem created them for a reason. There's a certain interdependency between all these creatures that exist in the environment. So in the same way that each one of them has a tafkid in creation in this world, the more so the human being who's the crown of creation. For sure, he has something to contribute. So Ele Pekudei, the Torah is reminding us, you're special. You have a mission in life that is only unique to you. Everyone is important to Hashem, regardless of where he comes from, and it has nothing to do with how rich or poor he is, regardless of which country he was born. All of that is not as important. Okay, if that's the case, that everyone has a mission and everyone is important and special, then we've reached a very important question that needs to be raised. Why doesn't everybody succeed in that mission? Why doesn't everyone accomplish their mission? Not everybody does. Even though it's true that everyone is here for a reason, a purpose, they don't necessarily realize their potential. They don't necessarily carry out what is intended for them. Why not? So one explanation, I have several lectures that discuss this idea, but briefly, just one thing that happens to people is that they focus instead on accumulating or on valuing money than in valuing time. What was emphasized in these parshiot? The kesef and the zahav, the silver and the gold, the precious materials that went into building the Mishkan. Yes, they're precious, but you know why they're precious? Because they were put to use in a very good place. Something very special was made with that gold and silver. But take someone whose entire focus is le'esof et hakesef. All he does is accumulate and saves all his money. Doesn't even spend it on himself or his family. It's ridiculous, but there are people like that. So what's wrong with that? They're focusing their time, their energy on accumulating all the silver and gold instead of focusing or instead of valuing the most important asset that we have, the most precious asset of all, time. Hazman, wachi yakar me'akol. Time is the most precious asset that unfortunately not everyone values. Except for the lawyers who charge $500 an hour, maybe they value it somewhat, I don't know. But other than that, not everybody values the time, and life is short. So what is happening is that they don't succeed because simply their focus is in the wrong place. They are valuing and more preoccupied with amassing a fortune, silver and gold, instead of really going after what's important, that is how to maximize, make the best use of their time. So Shlomo Melech has a very good pasuk for this. In Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. Me'uvat lo yuchal litkon, v'chisaron lo yuchal limanot. Something which is crooked or twisted can rarely be straightened out and fixed. Like there's an Arabic saying, a dog's tail will always remain twisted. It's a cute saying in Arabic. It's twisted, it's crooked. Me'uvat, something that has become crooked and twisted, it may be very difficult to ever fix. And there are all kinds of examples that the rabbis give us. What's me'uvat? What can be twisted? Well, imagine that a very, very uncomfortable situation, but this has happened, where a married woman had somebody else's child. He's a mamzer. That's a bastard. And some of you perhaps know that limits him as to who he can marry. But that's just one example. There's no way to fix him. It is damaged beyond repair. It was that woman and that man, whoever it is, not the father, well, he is somewhat the father, but not the husband, brought this soul into the world and damaged him in a very, very bad way. Me'uvat, something that's twisted that cannot be repaired. Look, sometimes things are done in life that are very difficult to fix. Let's give some better examples, things that are easier for us to understand, that may unfortunately also be common. A Kohen, as you know, cannot marry a divorcee. Imagine a Kohen got into a fight with his wife, and they got divorced. And later on they decide, well, we made a mistake, let's get back together. They can't. The same wife, same husband and wife, they can't get back together because he's a Kohen. A Kohen is limited from marrying a divorcee even though this was his previous wife. Me'uvat, lo yuchal litkon. This is twisted, it's beyond repair. I would never apply this, by the way, to someone by telling him, there's no way in the world that you're ever going to be a better person, whether it's a child, God forbid, that's going in the wrong path, or someone that he has no hope. People sometimes use that expression. Never say that. There is hope for everyone to do teshuvah, yes, to repent, to amend their ways, to come back, to bring peace and harmony to the family, even though it's been very, very tough. Some family members, they don't talk for years. They don't go to each other's weddings. Why? Because once upon a time they fought about the inheritance. It's usually only about money, by the way. Money can break up the best relationships. Best friends can become enemies overnight because of money. And I'm sure you know stories like that. So sometimes things are repairable, but they're very difficult to repair. But there are other times that it may be beyond repair. But what about the second half of the pasuk? V'chisaron lo yuchal limanot. Something that is a chisaron, something which is missing, lost, cannot be easily replaced. What's that? Time. The time is gone. You can't bring back yesterday. I wish I could, but we can't. So time that is lost, time that is gone, is chisaron lo yuchal limanot. You cannot count it. You cannot bring it back. It's gone forever. Well, isn't it a shame that there are people who actually will tell you, let's kill time? It's an American expression. I haven't heard that except perhaps in Israel, maybe in some other countries. I haven't heard that saying in Latin America. I don't even know if there's an equivalent to kill the time. This country, apparently people have so much time that they're willing, let's kill time. Just to let the time go by. How could you kill time? It's so precious. So much can be accomplished. I wish every day was 48 hours, not 24. You can accomplish more. So how could you think of killing time? Obviously, to them, it doesn't mean so much. That's why they're willing to kill it. So the point here is that in the same way that we're being told, Ele Pekudei Mishkan, this is the accounting of all that went into making the Mishkan, as far as gold, silver, and copper, this is the total sum. You should know that there is a total sum of time. There is such a thing, Bashamayim, how we used our time. Hashem says, I gave you 70 years, what did you do with it? The Gaon of Vilna explains that what the rabbis mean, that there's din v'cheshbon upstairs in the heavenly court, that there's a reckoning and an accounting to give on how we use our time. Why does it have to say din and cheshbon? It means the same thing. It's a reckoning is an accounting. An accounting is a reckoning. Why use different words? Din, which is more associated with justice, and cheshbon is more with accounting. But why say the two of them? A reckoning and an accounting of our deeds. So he says, din is what we did with our time. Cheshbon is what we could have done with that time, that we did not do, that we did not use right. So we're being judged for the two of them. What we actually did, how we spent our time, and what we could have done that we did not do. That is a tremendous loss perhaps. You know that had you used your time, you could have accomplished so much. You could have helped so many people. You have no idea what you could have done. And maybe they even show him a video upstairs. This is who you could have been had you used your time wisely, your money wisely, had you learned Torah. They show him a second version of his life, what could have been his life. So when one heads upstairs, he will be facing a din v'cheshbon, a total evaluation, a report card of how he used or misused that very precious time. There's a very beautiful, cute mashal, a parable, about this concept of how people do not realize that time flies. Very little of that time is used properly. And even though they've been around here for such a long time, they really haven't done too much. So you have this guy who lived to the age of 90. That's very nice. He heads upstairs, and upstairs he's told that, we have a tombstone for you here too. There's a tombstone down there in the cemetery where the body was buried, and we have your tombstone of what you did in the upper world. Okay, I want to see it. He goes to his tombstone upstairs, and he sees, you made a mistake. It says his name. So-and-so was born this year and passed away 2 years later. In other words, he lived for 2 years. He says, 2 years? Either you don't know math, or you have no idea of how much time I spent downstairs. I was 90 when I left this physical world. Why did you put 2? It says, you're the one that doesn't know math. You have it wrong. Upstairs, we have a different kind of math. The way we calculate the time is the time that you used properly in this world. Of course, you existed for 90 years, but you actually, from the 90 years, only used 2 years for prayer, for Torah, for Masim Tovim, for good deeds. That's the ones that we count upstairs. So what a shame. You were given 90 and you misused 88. It's very embarrassing. And this brings us to the topic of time management, which we don't have the time to cover now. It's a whole topic in itself. Time management, it's called. It's something that a lot of people want to learn about. How do we manage our time properly? Everyone would like to maximize their time. Somehow, deep down, we all know that life is short. We don't, unfortunately, think about it enough. But those who catch themselves and want to maximize their time may need outside help, and that's what time management is all about. So it's not easy. But where do you start? There's a place where everyone can start, that can help everyone manage their time properly. Even though there's perhaps various strategies and tools on how to do so, there is a place that everyone can start. And in order to understand where that place is, I need to ask you a question. What is worse, somebody who is nearsighted or farsighted? Does everybody know the difference here? Nearsighted, person who's nearsighted, he can't see from a distance, he needs glasses, he can only see up close. That's called a person who's nearsighted. Myopia. Then you have somebody who's farsighted. He can't see from close, he can only see from a distance. He needs also eyeglasses to correct his vision, but for a different weakness. You understand? He can only see from far, but he cannot see up close. So which one is worse? What is that? Both? Oh, of course, both. Which of the two is worst? I gave you this mashal, I gave you this parable or this example, because in the same way that we can understand that people are limited in their vision, physically they suffer, there's also limitation from the sechel. The mind can also be nearsighted. Really? The mind is nearsighted? So sometimes we call it short-sighted, but I prefer the term nearsighted. Short-sighted means something else. People can be nearsighted in their mind, which means what? They don't see the big picture. They only see a small thing, a detail or two. They don't see the bigger picture. They are nearsighted, meaning they cannot see too well everything around them. There's a saying in English, they can't see the forest for the trees. You may have heard about it. There's sometimes many, many trees, and because of the trees, they can't see that there's a forest out there. They can't see the forest because of the trees. The trees are confusing them. Just go back a little bit and take a look. Here, you have a forest. Don't look at the individual trees, look at the forest. They can't see the forest. They can't see that there's a forest out there. They're missing out. So the mind sometimes cannot see the bigger picture. Obviously, it is possible to see the bigger picture, but a lot of people are not seeing the bigger picture. So they're nearsighted in the mind. So what do we do? What do we do to correct that nearsightedness? So when the eyes, the physical eyes are nearsighted, how do we correct that vision? With eyeglasses. The eyeglasses help to correct the nearsightedness, to focus properly, so that you can see. What does it do? It amplifies, strengthens the vision, so that you could see detail. It sharpens the image. In the same way that eyeglasses can help us see things in a sharper way, there's something that we can do to the sechel, to the mind, to sharpen it. And that's called machshava, to have a clearer thought. We spoke a little bit about it last week. What are thoughts? Thoughts, depending on what they are, can help clean up the blurriness of the image. It depends what our thoughts are. If a person has contaminated, impure thoughts, then obviously he's going to be missing out a lot from the picture out there, because all he sees is impurities. That's what's occupying his mind, and therefore he cannot see all the beautiful things that there are to see, because his mind is contaminated with impure thoughts. So imagine that instead of those impure thoughts, he sticks into that same mind good thoughts, positive thoughts. He won't see so much confusion. In order to better understand this idea of thought, I'm going to give you one example. This will help us understand why people are nearsighted. Because remember, when a person cannot see very well with his mind, it is going to be very difficult for him to know the truth. So that's why it's important for us to realize this, that as a result of certain thoughts, or certain ideas, people are losing out and the truth is blurry. So let me give you one example and perhaps it will help. You may have heard that in Israel and other countries too, there is a big movement to try to get women the exact same equal rights as men. Men are in the army, women should be in the army. Men are in the tank, women should be in the tank. Everything the same. Well, okay, then my suggestion is somehow figure out a way for the man to become pregnant. And then I'll agree with you that women should have all the same rights. It's not about equality. People are getting mixed up over here. They are not identical. They are equal. Men and women, of course, are equal. We respect men, we respect women. Judaism respects everyone. But when they're not identical, what does a Jewish woman say every morning? Shasani kirtsono. I thank and bless Hashem. I praise Hashem for having made me what I am, because I recognize my contribution. I recognize my mission. What is the mission of a woman? To be an Ezer Kenedo. I will be able to help my husband. I will be able to bring children into this world, a new generation. I will be able to raise them. I will be able to contribute so much to this world in my own personal way because I have my own mission. Does that make me different? It only makes you not identical. But you're not different because you're important too. What does it mean, different? So some people have this confused ideology, or whatever you want to call it, outlook, that somehow they feel left out. Oh, we're not the same. Of course you're not the same. You're not identical, but you are equal. You're equally important in a different way. That's all it is. Some people are so unhappy with the way they are, they want to change. Men want to become women, women want to become men. Just recognize that Hashem made you the way you are because that's what you need to contribute in your own way. And what happens as a result of this mix-up is that Gidrei HaTzniut, all the laws concerning modesty are also lost, are also forgotten. What about modesty? Put a woman next to a man. I mean, what do you expect to happen? And then the women complain, he touched me. Well, what do you expect? You put him next to him. All kinds of things and all kinds of problems occur as a result of mixing men and women together who are not married. It's just normal nature. What do you expect? You're tempting the man to go against the Torah. Why put him in that situation? So isn't that important too? But they don't have these concepts. They don't have this philosophy. They don't believe in this. Their emet is blurry because of thoughts that they have from beforehand that is not enabling them to see the other side. They don't know about the Torah. Unfortunately, they're not connected to that. So you see what happens here as a result of their having different thoughts, not the correct thoughts. It's blurring their emet, their truth. They have no idea, therefore, what is the emet? If you were to tell them a little bit about what the Torah says is the emet, oh really? That's the mission or job of a Jewish woman. This is what life is all about. Life is meaningful, it's purposeful. There's so much that you can do in your way. Then of course they wouldn't even demand the job in the tank. Why go to the army? Just being a mother, a wife is in itself a tremendous task and responsibility. Much more than a soldier. Soldiers, of course, do an incredible good job. They risk their life, of course. But that's not for the woman. The Torah teaches us, therefore, make sure that each one does what they need to do. Each one has a role. Each one has a mission. Each one is special, but they're not identical. What can we do? Hashem doesn't want everybody to be identical. Each one does what they're supposed to do, and they share their duties. So, I gave you this example just to illustrate this point, that because people have the wrong ideas in their mind, that's what throws them off, and that's why they're never able to focus on doing what needs to be done. So how do we purify the thoughts? We were talking about correcting the vision with glasses, so how do you purify the thoughts? Where are the eyeglasses for the thoughts? How do we help the thoughts? You put good thoughts. Yes, but what are those good thoughts? Part of those good thoughts are recognizing the tachlit, knowing what is the goal. If I know this is where I have to go to, hopefully I'll direct myself there. I may have some distractions along the way. That's fine, but I know where I have to go. So if I made a mistake, I'll get off this freeway and come back on. But have you ever seen somebody ride a bus? Sir, where are you going? I don't know. You're riding a bus. You don't know where you're going? That's exactly what is happening with many people today. Sir, you're alive. Welcome to the world. Where are you going? I don't know. People may know the immediate answer, perhaps. Well, I'm going to college, or I'm going to work. Yeah, no. Where are you headed tomorrow, a year from now? Do you know? I can't know. So they don't have a set goal. They don't have clarity as to what their mission is. And there's a mission that is common to all of humanity, and that is to serve Hashem. We're here for some beautiful purpose, each one in his way to contribute, but many people do not recognize what it is. So, the bottom line is, every human being is necessary here. Everyone that is created has a purpose. We're all special, we're all important. But only when people appreciate what they are and what they represent will they be able to appreciate the time that they were given. That time will not be completely appreciated, the time that they were given in this world, unless they first appreciate themselves for what they are. People do not appreciate who they are, what they're supposed to do. Why should they use their time properly? They'll kill it. Have a lot of time to kill. Once they appreciate who they are and that they are important messengers, they have a very important mission to accomplish, it will help. It's not a guarantee, but it will help them hopefully take charge of that time. I better use the time properly. I only have so much time left. And you know what, by the way? No one has a clear idea of how much time he will be here. He may think, well, I was told the average is Yemei Shnotenu B'hem Shivim Shana. I was told the average is 70. But a lot of people stop all of a sudden at the age of 40. That's it. Heart attack, stroke, or as we call it in Hebrew, dom lev, didn't wake up. So we don't know for sure if we'll get to 70. Hopefully all of us will. We'll get to 80 or more. But by the way, we want to get there and be healthy along the way too. It's not enough just to have long years and not have health. It's sometimes better to live a little bit less, but to be healthy till the end, than to struggle for the last 20 years of one's life. But anyway, that's a whole different topic. Why do people have to struggle so much? Why those last few years of their life are not as productive? Not because it's their fault, because of their physical ailment, some physical limitation. That we don't know. Only Hashem knows. But as long as we're healthy, we need to maximize our time as best as possible, because those days that we have now are not going to come back. Those healthy years may not be there later. And if we want to do everything right then, who says we will be able to do so? You know, children, they've grown up. You've had your chance to raise them properly. Now they're adults. What are you going to tell them? Even though you're convinced of the truth, you have the tachlit, you have the eyeglasses, you see a lot better now. But yes, welcome to the club of Balei Teshuvah. Yes, there are a lot of people like that who have done Teshuvah, who've made a U-turn in the middle of the life. They're already in their 50s or 60s. Welcome. Better late than never, they say in English. But your children may be lost forever. Those children are not necessarily going to do what their daddy and mother decided to do at their later age. For whatever reason. Maybe they want it, but their wives doesn't want it. It's not easy anymore. While they're young, that is when you have your best chance. So what can you do? Nevertheless, you can pray. Hashem, please help me with my kids. Prayer is something that we always need to do regardless. And don't underestimate the power of prayer. It could really help. I very much recommend anyone who wants to have a little bit of an idea of the value of time to hear the lecture that I have on the internet. Hurry up. Time is running out. I think it really is an eye-opener as to the importance of time and what we need to do to manage our time properly. You may remember the rabbis tell us, Azman katzar v'melacha merubah. Time is short, and the melacha, the work that we need to accomplish, is a lot. There's so much to do. So, if that's the case, what could we tell someone to help him get started? Going back to our original question before, how do we get started? Besides, of course, recognizing the tachlit. How do we define what we need to do? Instead of just saying tachlit, what is that tachlit? What is that goal? So I think one of the best ways to define that tachlit are the words of Shlomo Melech towards the end of Kohelet. Very, very important book, by the way. Ecclesiastes, for those who want to have a little bit of a better understanding of what life involves. This is a man, Shlomo Melech, who was the wisest man that ever lived, with chokhmah, intelligence. He only lived to about 52, but he knew a lot. He knew a lot about this world. And he begins that book with Hevel Evalim. Everything is Hevel Evalim. It's a bunch of vanities. But everything is a bunch of vanities? Yeah. Take it from me. I've seen everything. I've tried everything. I've been through everything. And take it from me. Everything is a bunch of vanities. Wow. When the rabbis first saw what he wrote, they said, let's put away this book. This is not to be made public. He's calling everything vanities. Even Chas v'Shalom, the good things. But they read a little bit more, and towards the end he says, Sof davar hakol nishma et Elokim yirav et mitzvotav shemor ki zeh kol adam. At the end of his book he writes, the bottom line is, Sof davar, everything will be heard and documented upstairs. Hakol nishma. Therefore, you have only so much time here in this world. Everything is vanities, except just make sure you fear God and you observe His mitzvot. Everything else is vanities. It doesn't mean everything. Obviously, to have a family is something good. There's a lot of good things. But he meant in general, life is full of vanities. And in order to understand what it means, you have to learn through the book. And I could be here another couple hours explaining what he meant by vanities. I'm just going to tell you a quick example. If everything is dependent on mazal, for example, when you're born, even if you take 3 jobs, you won't be richer than what your mazal says you will have. People don't know that. They actually think that they can control their destiny completely. How much money they will make, who will they marry, what kind of kids they will have. It's nonsense. You have no control over certain things. Where do you have control of free will? Akol bidei shamayim, chutz mirat shamayim. Everything is in the hand of heaven, mazal, except for the fear of heaven. That's why Shlomo Melech tells us in the end, this is what you should focus on. This is what life is all about. This is what's important. The rest is heaven avalim. Not that it's not important at all, it's that you have no control over it. So vain means, vain will be your effort if you try to change it. You can't change people. Oh, I gotta change people. There was a great rabbi who once said, when I was young, I said to myself, I'm gonna change the world. I grew up a little bit more, then I realized I can't do that. So I'm gonna change my community. I became a little bit older and I realized that that's impossible too. I'll focus just on my family, I'll change them. When I became a little bit older, I realized, I hope I can change myself. Forget about everyone else. Yes, that's where we should start. Focus on changing yourself. That's doable. And that's not easy either. Human nature is very, very tough. It's not easy. We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. We need to work on it. The Torah gives us the direction, guides us on how to perfect ourselves, how to refine our character. But without the Torah, to do it on your own, without any knowledge, without knowing the tachlit, forget it. People are not motivated to change. As I've said many times, ask a senator, is this one of your goals in life, to be a better person? What for? As long as I'm re-elected, as long as I'm paid well. And people don't know what he's all about unless he's in the public eye where they see what his true colors are. They don't know what's going on. What kind of a husband is he? Ask his wife. Oh, this guy's a nasty guy at home. In the Senate, in the House, he may behave himself, maybe. But at home, he's a nasty guy. Now, the wife knows the husband, right? So you don't know these things. What should motivate him to change? Unless he sees the tachlit, this makes a big difference. This means a lot to Hashem if I become a better person. Otherwise, why should he change? So if we were to say in a few words what that tachlit is, or part of the tachlit is to observe the mitzvot, to fear God, to have a relationship with Him. Rabbis also tell us that tachlit of the chokhmah, the wisdom that Hashem gave us, what is the purpose of all the chokhmah, is ma'asim tovim u'tshuva, good deeds and teshuvah, repentance. Good deeds I understand. Good deeds, everyone should do good deeds, Jews and non-Jews. But what is teshuvah for? I need chokhmah for teshuvah? Yes. You need wisdom for teshuvah because sometimes things are mekulkalim. It kalkelu, things got ruined. Mistakes were made. You need teshuvah because you need to repair them. People have to forgive each other. People have to say, I'm sorry. So you need teshuvah. You need the act of forgiveness, whether it's between human beings or between us and Hashem, in order to fix. We are promised that if we do proper teshuvah, we can repair our past misdeeds. We can atone for them. So teshuvah is a necessity. So tachlit of the chokhmah, part of the purpose of the chokhmah, what Hashem gave us chokhmah, wisdom, is that we should realize that how important it is to do good deeds and to do teshuvah when necessary. Person has no tachlit, he's never going to do any repair work. What for? There's no real will, real desire, no motivation whatsoever for a person to change himself. If he has no tachlit, life has no purpose or meaning. Okay, now that we're convinced how important the chokhmah is, how important it is to know the tachlit, we need to know what the foundation of this chokhmah is. In other words, just raw knowledge by itself is not enough. Reshit chokhmah, yirat Hashem. The beginning of all knowledge, the foundation of knowledge, is the fear of God. In other words, if that's not part of the formula of the chokhmah, then that chokhmah will not take us too much. It will not take us too far. Perhaps to the Nobel Prize. Yes, that chokhmah might get this individual the Nobel Prize. He's chacham. But so what? What are you going to do with him in the afterlife? Well, he doesn't believe in the afterlife. What can we do? So, in order for the chokhmah to really serve the human being properly, Reshit chokhmah yirat Hashem. What will this yirat Hashem do for him? Something very special. It will humble him. You see, what happens is that a lot of people, because of their chokhmah, they're very big chachamim, they become arrogant. They forget themselves. So you have arrogance, you have distractions of the Yetzer Hara, you have blurred vision, not having the eyeglasses to be able to focus on the tachlit. A person, therefore, is not going to use his time properly. So, a lack of humbleness will make the person stumble in life. He will make many mistakes because he's not humble. So, we very much value now, appreciate what chokhmah is, but we have to remember that yirat shamayim has to come along with it, otherwise it will never produce humbleness. And without that humbleness, an arrogant person can easily fall. I'm just going to share with you a few quick stories of what arrogance has done to very wealthy people. One story from my grandfather who heard it from the Ponovizharov in South Africa. There was a gentleman who was very wealthy in South Africa, and he asked the rabbi, I always pray before the Amidah that God can bring someone down to his knees instantaneously. And he could also raise him from dust. You've heard that. Rabbi, I don't understand. How can God bring me down at once so quickly? Even if God takes away my factories in South Africa, I have real estate in Manhattan. And even if you were to take the real estate from Manhattan, I have bank accounts in Switzerland. You mean to say God can take all of that at once? So the rabbi says to him, he doesn't have to take anything from you. He can take you away from that. The guy passed away 2 days later. 2 days later he passed away. Where is his intelligence? How could he ever think that way? Doesn't he realize that God can take him away from that and there's nothing left? Arrogance. As a result of the ga'ava, of the arrogance, people lose themselves. They don't think straight. Rothschild, one of the Rothschilds, was once stuck in a safe, his own safe, a safe where all the money is. He was stuck. Nobody can hear him knocking on the door. He had, I guess, a little hole where he can breathe maybe. But he realized he's going to die of hunger. And he left a note with his blood. He pierced his finger because he had no pen to write. He left a note with blood. I realized this is coming to me because once upon a time I said, I will never die of hunger. He had so much money. How could you be so arrogant? Lack of humbleness. He died of hunger in his own safe. Then you have the opposite. You have a humble Rothschild that I mentioned to you in another lecture. Very, very humble man who was a very wealthy banker. And he had this private room that nobody knew what's going on in that private room. He didn't even let the maid go in to clean that room. Until this one rabbi who came to collect funds for his yeshiva said to him, listen, before you give me any money, I need to know what's going on in that room. I mean, suspicious. I won't tell anyone, don't worry. Okay, as long as you don't tell anyone while I'm alive, I'll let you in. He took him in. And what does he see in that room? A coffin, a tehillim, a ner neshama, a candle that's lit for those who have departed, have left this world. Tachrichim, shrouds, a talit, which they'll cover the dead. He says, Rabbi, I have a lot of money, I'm a very successful individual. It gets to me sometimes, all that fortune and all that honor and high position. I need to spend a few minutes every day in this room. It really humbles me when I see this is the end of every human being. When I come out of that room, I'm a changed man. He was smart. He took the medication. He put on those eyeglasses that we were talking about to see his tachlit, another kind of tachlit, the tachlit of every human being. In other words, the end, the real end. Without that, people don't think about death. Rabbis tell us if someone has a very powerful yetzer hara, he should do the same thing. Taskir lo et yom hamitah. Remind yourself the day of death. In other words, if you cannot break that desire that you may have by simply learning Torah, which is really the better way to do it, the quickest way, go to the Torah, go to the Bet Midrash. If you can't do it, that's not enough. Taskir lo et yom hamitah. Remind your evil inclination that one of these days they're going to bury you a few feet under the ground. And worms are going to consume you. Have those kinds of thoughts. And by the way, you won't be depressed. It will humble. I don't think it will depress. But sometimes people have to think like that. That is why it's a big mitzvah to go to a house of mourning more than to go to a wedding in some ways. Why? Because the house of mourning, that's going to remind you. One of these days, people are going to mourn over you. Without those reminders, people don't realize what the tachlit is, what life is all about. So, what do we get from all of this? I remember in the 70s that calculators came out. Remember calculators? Before that, we used to do math by hand. We used to have to think. Today, people don't think anymore. Everything is calculators, computers. Nobody's thinking. They're not thinking enough. And that's the bigger problem today. People are not thinking enough. And as a result of not thinking, how are they ever going to remind themselves about the day of death, that life is short, that time is so precious? And before you realize that 10 years go by, you look yourself at the mirror and you say, so many white hairs? Where did they come from? Yeah, the white hairs are also to remind you that the time is getting close. And soon we're going to have to give an accounting. And if we don't have some eyeglasses to sharpen our vision, we're not going to figure this out. So what should we do? How do we get help to think and to be able to properly focus, besides, of course, planting good thoughts into our mind, besides hopefully learning Torah? All of these things can help. Besides all of that, I always remind people, don't forget that the most powerful tool that we have is prayer, tefillah. And if you look at the tefillah and you understand what you're saying, one of the prayers is about this, Tem belibenu bina, le'avin, le'askil. Give us the understanding, give us the insight to be able to discern, to be able to figure things out, to be able to focus properly so that we can learn, so that we can observe. This is what it's all about. We have to resort to prayer to remind ourselves. Hopefully Hashem will help us. Just like to end that it is not possible for us to know everything. A lot of people would like to understand a lot about life. Why is God like this? Why does He do things this way? And that's really going to take away a lot of their time of searching and figuring things out. And I have this all the time. People call me, contact me, Rabbi, before I want to do this, I want to understand this, and this is not right, and this is not fair. They're judging God. You say God exists, prove it to me, otherwise I won't do it. They're making it more difficult for themselves. That's why it's called emunah, for a good reason. Emunah means that I believe. I have enough information not to believe blindly, but I have enough information to go by that I can rely on. The reason why I can rely on it is because generation after generation, our forefathers understood what the tachlit is. What they transmitted to us is not necessarily all that knowledge. Not everybody has the time to learn all the Torah and to know everything there is. And even if we learn the whole Torah, we will not know everything and not have the answers to all the questions. But one thing we did receive, and that is some clarity about the tachlit. What is the purpose of life? Every father, hopefully, transmitted that to his children. And when we have clarity of what our purpose in life is, as hakol yistader, then everything will settle in its right place. That is therefore should be our goal. Figure out, number one, why are you here? What is the purpose of life? Then everything else will work out. Amen.